Our free sample pack giveaway with Computer Music Magazine, issue 200, is a spectacular collection of modern sounds. And these are provided courtesy of top quality sample label, Goldbaby. There's some brilliant drum sounds, FX, vocal hits, stabs, melodic elements, with a slightly vintage and analogue flavour.
Boom bap.
So for this video, we're going to break down the track's creation, arrangement and mix, so you get a practical insight into how the samples can be put to use. We've used Ableton Live 9 as our DAW here, and both the samples and Live 9 project files are included with CM200, so you can open the project and analyse its elements for yourself.
Boom.
And we've only used either Live's inbuilt effects or our own CM plugins, which also come with the magazine. So let's dive in and deconstruct this club banger. So we'll open the first project where we built up our basic rhythm elements. We started at a fairly slow tempo of 123 BPM, and we created this pounding kick and tom groove. The idea was to have an extremely bassy, dominating kick drum on each beat, and then fit in a weighty mid-range tom around it. We began with this initial kick sample, which has lots of power and character. As with the majority of our sounds, we turned its channel down to leave enough headroom for other elements. Next, we added this record click sample to give us a sharp transient layer over our first kick. As this sound was originally too wide for this purpose, we added Live's utility plugin and soloed the right channel. And what this is doing is taking the right channel of our click and playing it in isolation as a mono signal through both the channel's left and right outputs, instead of simply summing the left and right channels together. And then we layered a third kick. We pitched it up by 5 semitones, and then we used Vengeance's Filter CM to high pass the kick, cutting out any lows that might clash. It's a very subtle layer, but it adds some character. And once layered, we group these 3 kicks to a single group channel so we can gel them together with some subtle processing. So we saturated them very slightly with premix CM. And then we applied a touch of limiting with barricade CM just to tame some spikiness. And we then exported a single kick hit out as a WAV file for later use. And you should check out CM199's cover feature on the art of layering to find out more about drum stacking and this kind of processing in depth. Now for the tom groove. It's very simple. We imported 3 similar toms from the Goldbaby pack onto different pads in a drum rack. We tweak their individual pitches and then we sequence them as MIDI just to get this rolling rhythm here. And we also applied one of Live's MPC groove templates in the MIDI clip to give us some slight swing on the 16th note tom. So that's the idea that kicked off the track really. Pretty minimal processing, but choice sound selection, thanks to these high quality samples. And then for some crusty vibe, we imported this single hit of vinyl crackle onto each beat. And then we reversed them all to create this pseudo sidechaining effect. And then we rolled off the rumbling mids and lows with an EQ to thin the layer out. Now for some more percussion. The CM200 Goldbaby pack has some terrific classic drum machine drum hits. So here we've gone with some Roland TR-909 percussion to give us that real dirty club feel. So we placed this clap over each beat for a very monotonous kind of programmed vibe here. And the famous 909 open hi-hat sits on each offbeat. And then we've put a 909 ride on each beat. And this was our initial, very, very basic rhythm idea. So now we'll fire up our main project. You can see now our process kick is just a single audio file that we exported out, and all these core drum elements are all present too. And what we've done in this project, we beefed out our kick and tom groove with some parallel saturation. So we grouped the kick and tom together. And then we sent some of its signal to an instance of Premix CM, which is on a return track. And if you solo the return track, you can hear what that's doing. It sounds a bit strange on its own, but when they're blended together, this adds some real weight and harmonics to the beat, whilst keeping its original character. And now also our tom is being slightly high-pass filtered, and it's side-chained against the kick drum. And we've done quite a lot of side-chaining here and there in this track. We've used Live 9's compressor, and we used the kick drum as the trigger input for the compressor. To duck some of our elements out the way of the kick slightly, allowing it to poke through the mix. So we've processed the percussion as well that we had before. Now I've added quite a lot of saturation on different tracks using Premix CM. There's a touch of reverb on the open hat too. And then we've also added some subtle other layers of percussion, all from the Goldbaby pack still. So we used a rimshot sample in a simpler instrument, just for a clicky little embellishment now and then. And then there's a Rex file of a tambourine loop that we've sidechained against our kick And we went into the Rex file and applied our MPC groove template to it, just to get that shuffle in there. And we've also used a crash cymbal every now and then on every 8 bars or so. It's very cliched, but effective nonetheless. Okay, so the other driving element to this very simple club track is the old school-esque lead stab. So what we've done is taken a single stab sample from the Goldbaby pack and we loaded it into a simpler instrument on a MIDI track. And we pitched it down to -6 semitones. And we pulled the amp envelope sustain down so it's got a shorter look to it, shorter in length. And our MIDI notes are playing very simple chords to give us just a bit of a thicker old school feel to the stab sound. And again, we've applied the same MPC swing template as before to give the part some groove. So what we'll do here, as you can see, there's a lot of processing, there's a lot of plugins on this stab. But each one is doing a specific job in building up the sound, so we'll deconstruct that now. So, first we've saturated our stab, just to give it some drive. Then we've added some bit crushing over the top of it, just to get some more top end fuzz and that kind of old school kind of fuzzy vibe to it. And next we've added some short reverb, just add some very, very subtle realism there. And then after that we've added a second reverb, which is slightly longer and gives more of a tail to the sound. Now, after that we've got a delay that fills in some spaces in between the hits, gives some character to the stab. And then after that we've cut out some mids. The mids were getting quite heavy, so we've cut some of those out with an EQ. After that we've applied some limiting in quite a creative way. It's removing quite a lot of attack and giving the sound more sustain too. Then we've sidechained the sound against the kick. Not too much there. And then we've got a high pass filter just to carve away unnecessary lows. And then at the end of the chain, we've got a delay plugin, and this is actually being automated at other points in the arrangement, just for interest and effect. We'll get onto that later. So we've changed this single dry stab then into much more of a characterful lead element as the core basis of our track to go with the kick and tom. And also at different parts in the arrangement, as you'll probably hear as we go along, we've added in extra notes here and there. We've added a little triplet pattern into the MIDI notes as well, just to step things up a bit later on. And then we've also used a single percussion bleep over our riff with some delay applied. And this is subtle, but it sits over the top later on in our arrangement. Sits over the top of the stab and again adds interest, steps things up. Okay, so once our core elements were in place, it was simply a case of creating a simple subtractive arrangement. So we start with all of our parts all laid out. We arranged everything out into a 32 bar section and then muted parts, took away elements and then built them up again. So starting up the drop, we began with only the kick, the tom, the vinyl noise and the lead stab. There's enough going on here to drop into, so we started with that. And then every 4 bars we introduced a new element or two of percussion. And throughout the groove we then added gaps here and there for variation, just to keep things interesting, taking parts out. And also we've added some characterful boomy kicks. There's an 808 style kick. Another boomy kick there. Just to fill in some spaces. When we've taken out our main kick tom. Our Goldbaby pack has a handful of interesting vocal hooks, so we've used 2 words right before our drop here.
Boom bap.
Just to give our track character and add a human element in there for interest.
Boom bap.
We've chopped into the words and placed them onto the exact final 2 beats before the drop to keep things in time. And we've also used the first word in other gaps later on.
Boom bap.
We've cut everything else out for surprise and to give us more impact when everything else comes crashing back in. Okay, so the key to a very simplistic club track like this is to use lots of rises, effects, and basically ear candy to maintain a sense of rising and falling at certain points. So our Goldbaby pack has got plenty of brilliant rises, falls, effects, soundscapes to choose from. So we've used some of these and we've peppered them throughout the arrangement.
Boom bap.
It looks like quite a lot here on the timeline, but each one's doing a very small job, but it all works together to make our final arrangement. So we've got some really nice riser effect samples from the pack that give us that sense of anticipation and movement when things are building up towards key points. And it's always a good idea to try reversing effect sounds, and then you can place them at key build-up points so they open out and suck into a drop. And we've done this in a few places. And we've also played with the lengths of our sounds, shortened them, shortened down audio files, and just to tweak samples. We've transposed them around here and there to get things to fit, things like that. And to thin a lot of these sounds out and to prevent them clashing with our core elements, we've also applied Vengeance's filter CM where necessary and used its high pass filter just to get rid of excessive lows and mids. We really don't want these sounds dominating at all. And there's a point here just into the drop where we also took a single word vocal, a single little ad lib, and just added a cool tape style delay effect, just for more interest there. Okay, so our drop was almost done here. We've got our core elements, then we've got some nice effects, some ear candy peppered in here just to keep things rolling along. Everything's building up. But we needed more melodic interest for our breakdown and build-up sections to turn this into a proper track. So firstly, we took our lead riff and we gave its MIDI notes some variation over 4 bars. To try and turn this into some kind of intro melody, breakdown melody. And then we used 2 long tones, 2 long samples to create a couple of pad elements ourselves. So one of these is low pass, just so we're using its lower frequencies. And then the second one is a reverse stab. It's quite a different sound to its source, as you can hear. But we've reversed it and moved its endpoint, so it swells open and creates quite an old school pad kind of sound. And then to go with our breakdown melodies, we added one more interesting part, which was a church bell sample from the Goldbaby pack. So we transposed this sample to fit the key of our other elements. And we added quite a characterful delay on there as well. And our breakdown elements change key in quite a rave style manner, because everything's sampled. As you transpose things up and down anyway, it gives it that very old school 90s feel. So we took this a bit further and transposed all these parts up again. So whilst this melody is unorthodox, it does provide kind of slightly evil, old school flavour to our track. So as far as having elements in the project, we're pretty much there now. We've built everything up. We've now got the arrangement here down. We made an intro, a short beat intro. And then slightly more melodic breakdown that builds up. And in a simpler instrument, we also made a snare roll. It's just a snare from the pack. We've transposed it and we've just arranged it on 16th notes. And we've applied our MPC quantize again, just for the build-up section.
Boom bap.
So now we've pretty much got our core elements. Everything's arranged, everything's laid out. So what we did then, we automated several of our track's elements just to give us a more natural, flowing, more interesting arrangement. So we've got a delay here. We turn this on and off over our lead stab at key points. In the breakdowns and build-ups. And then we automated its mix to introduce the effect, as you can hear. And we automated the sustain on our snare roll's volume envelope, just to slightly open it out towards the drop. And then we also used a high-pass filter over our master output to remove bass from the track in the breakdowns and in the intro. Just to give more emphasis to the heavy drop that's about to follow. So when it does drop back in, you've got that release of all the sub end, all the bass dropping that we built up towards. So to finish, we added a couple of plugins to our master bus. We've got an EQ here, scooping out some mid and adding some high mids. And then we've used a limiter here to maximise our loudness levels.
Boom.
This isn't necessarily a 100% professional finished master, but it's good enough to test out in a club, good enough to play in our DJ set alongside other commercial releases. And so there is our finished track, created entirely using samples from Computer Music Issue 200's Goldbaby sample pack. And you can get the sample pack itself, you can get the Live 9 project files for this track, and also our CM plugins. They're all free with either the print or digital editions of Computer Music Magazine, Issue 200.